just finished up phase 3 of the MCU, which was the longest phase with 11 movies. Here's my ranking from worst to best. Coming in at 11th place is Captain Marvel. This is the only movie from the phase that I think is bad. Not only is it a bad movie, it's straight garbage. It's forgettable, the characters aren't really likable, the plot as a whole is just a mess, the pacing, the humor's pretty lackluster. It's overall just a really bad film, and it's one of the worst in the MCU. 10th place is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now we're getting to the movies that are at least watchable. This movie has the problem of they completely ruined Scott's character. As in the first movie, he was actually a pretty smart guy, but then they dumbed him down. They made some of the characters at least a little more interesting, but again, forgettable villain. Overall, the humor just was a little more forced in this one compared to the first. It didn't have the character depth the way that the first one did for Scott. It's overall just a mediocre film. At number 9 is Doctor Strange. This movie had so much potential to be better. The animation is great, it's really experimental, and it shows you the time warping and how powerful Doctor Strange and all these other wizards are. The problem with this movie is that the characters are just so uninteresting. Doctor Strange is kind of portrayed at the beginning as a watered down Tony Stark. Also, none of the side characters that interesting. The villain's pretty terrible. Yet the biggest problem with this movie is that the dark side of the magic isn't utilized until the absolute end of the movie. It would have been so much better where if we saw Doctor Strange versus the dark powers from the magic go head to head early on. But instead, this movie shows us uninteresting characters and a pretty lame villain. It's overall just kind of a mediocre watch. Number 8 is Spider-Man Far From Home. The second half of this movie is very entertaining. It's high stakes, we see Peter Parker at his best, we see how intellectual he could be, how brave he could be, and that really brings a lot to Spider-Man's character. Where throughout the entire movie, he was just kind of a mess up, he was just wanting to go on vacation with his friends, but you saw the transformation of a hero of what he had to do to save people's lives. So I really like the second half of this movie. The problem is that the first half of this movie is so boring. It just doesn't get anywhere. The pacing's pretty bad, and it's overall just kind of a snooze fest. I think had the first half of this movie been like the second half, we're talking about at least a top 5 movie in this phase. But the problem is that the first half is so unengaging. You have a bad first half and a good second half of the movie, which balances out to an okay film. Number 7, Avengers Endgame. This is gonna piss a lot of people off, but this movie is way too long. The first half of this movie, while it is trying to capture the fact that everyone has lost their lives, it just does it in such a boring way. Where I think Avengers Endgame, I think it should have been split up into 2 separate parts. Where the first part is basically everyone losing their lives and finding the plan to save them, and then the second one could have been utilized going up against Thanos having that rematch. And that's the problem with this movie, where the climax just goes by so fast, where it doesn't really feel like the Avengers are endangered of this world's gonna get captured by Thanos and then everything's gonna be lost, not just half of these people. I think the stakes, crazy as it sounds, I think the stakes for the Avengers weren't necessarily that high because it never felt like the Avengers were in trouble of losing everything. And this movie just doesn't have a good climax. The first half isn't that good. Well, I think the concept and the ending is really good. This movie is just not as good as people say. Number 6 is Captain America Civil War. This movie has a very interesting plot. It's hero versus hero, Captain America and his group versus Iron Man. Yes, it's very entertaining. It's really cool to see the Avengers break up and go head to head. It does bring up very interesting plots. The problem with this movie is that a lot of it is just so forced. So Zemo, the antagonist, has this brilliant plan to make the Avengers fight each other, but everything just kind of goes too smoothly, where everything just lines up perfectly for them to just fight each other, and then in the movie, uncharacteristic parts like Winter Soldier killing Tony Stark's parents, and Captain America doesn't bring it to Tony Stark's attention. He just hides it this entire time, where Captain America was in fact close with Howard Stark. It just felt so forced. Everything kind of had to line up in order for every sequence to work. I think it's a cool movie. I think the action's great. it just felt so forced, and it feels like there's so much plot armor in this movie. Number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. While this movie isn't as good as the first one, it's still a pretty good film. There are a couple flaws with this film. One, there's way too much forced humor, where the first one felt more naturally funny. The second one, it feels like it's forcing jokes just so it could try to get some cheap laughs from the audience. But the problem with this movie is that it's supposed to be an emotional movie. You don't have to force jokes, just let them come naturally like the first one. Also, the first half of this film, well, it's not bad, the pacing's still very slow, but despite those flaws, this movie does a lot well. As I've said before, the emotional side to this sequel is very good. It shows the backstory of Peter, shows the relationship he has with his dad, and it showed the deep dark secret that his dad killed his mom. There's a lot more heartfelt moments, the villain is pretty good. The climax of the movie is also very entertaining as well. It's a very good film, it's just not as good as the first one. Number 4 is the Black Panther. Finally, an MCU movie that doesn't have a forgettable villain. Killmonger is great in this film. He's a great compare and contrast to the Black Panther. The characters, at least the main characters, are very interesting. The hero and the antagonist are both worth watching. The side characters are kind of filler, but at that point you're just nitpicking. The animation, the acting is great in this movie, and even though it's a little bit of a more formulaic plot, it gives you a good comparison to the social problems in the world, and it compares how Wakanda is to Oakland and America. It's a great compare and contrast movie. It's overall a really strong film. Number 3 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This is a take that some people might not be ready for, but Tom Holland is the best Peter Parker. He's not the best Spider-Man, but he's the best Peter Parker. Holland's performance gives you the feel that you are actually witnessing a high schooler balance his daily life and being a superhero. This movie has great humor, great acting, a good villain, good animation. It's overall just a really fun watch. The only downside I have with this movie is that I wish Spider-Man was more reliant on himself and his skills instead of relying on his suit and Tony Stark. I think Spider-Man needed to be more self-reliant. Still, it's a really good film. Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. This is the best MCU villain. Thanos, obviously, he's entertaining, he's a huge threat, and it really does feel like he's taking on the entire world. Because you have every single character from the previous movies going up against Thanos. Every character shines to a degree. It makes the movie such a high stakes, entertaining watch. The animation is great. The acting is great. The ending is impeccable. It's overall just a great film. There isn't anything I can say about this movie that someone else hasn't already said. The only reason it's not number 1 is because the number 1 movie just has better humor and better pacing. The best movie of MCU Phase 3 is Thor Ragnarok. This might be an unpopular opinion, but this movie has it all. It has a good villain, great characters, great acting, good animation, pretty good pacing. This movie is so complete. I like what they did with Thor's character. Let's be honest, Thor in the first 2 movies had no personality. He was boring, way too serious, but they made him more entertaining, more likable, more comedic. It's so much better to watch a protagonist you actually want to care for. Also, Loki, Hulk, they deliver side characters. Everything about this movie just pretty much delivers. It's a fun, entertaining watch, and Thor shows how powerful he really is. He doesn't need his hammer to be powerful. He also uses his wits at the end of the day to save his entire people and to take down his sister. Thor's character was improved so much in this movie. The characters are great. It's overall a fun, entertaining film, and it is the best of MCU Phase 3.